Hi, everyone. My name is Peyton Lauderdale, and today I have Emily Morehead from the Couch Therapy. Today's session is going to be a little bit different than normal in that we are going to talk to a therapist, and we've got questions to ask about mental health for lost moms. And so I've had the privilege of getting to know Emily a little bit, never in person, of course, because of, you know, the word I want to say, 2020, 2021. Anyway, those years are gone by, and Emily is seeing patients in her office, and I know she's going to share more about the expansion of the couch therapy. But before we launch into all of our questions, Emily, would you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about you?
We are virtual friends, Peyton. That makes me laugh. Like it's an online friendship. Yeah, we met in 2020. And one day I just need to hug your neck. So
I
thanks for having
know.
me on. Yeah, so my name is Emily Morehead. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas. Um, and I'm the co-owner of the Couch Therapy. And one of the things that I specialize in and love working in is maternal mental health, meaning women who are on a fertility journey, women who are adopting, women who've experienced loss. I really enjoy working in that motherhood space. And working in that motherhood space, unfortunately, there is a huge percentage of women that have experienced loss, maybe not even coming to counseling because of that loss, but it is a huge part of the population that I serve, and I'm so honored to work with and hear their stories. I am certified as a perinatal mental health therapist and work specifically as an infertility counselor as well. And so unfortunately, our spaces overlap in the lost community, and really love being able to refer to you guys at Gathering Hope for community. I think it's so big with the secrecy and silence in the lost community. And so really grateful to be able to team up and collaborate with you guys.
Me too. I feel like you are speaking to a large portion of the moms that we serve. We have a lot of moms who've experienced infertility who are currently going through adoption or have adopted after the loss of a baby. And so many of the other things, you're right, we overlap in a lot of ways, which is why I'm especially glad to have you on today. So I have a couple questions for you, but I know people are wanting to know specifically about counseling. And
Mhm.
so, why is counseling important for grieving moms, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about counseling, I think about a safe space. When I use the word space, I think, or safe space, I think it can be a little off-putting. Like, no, I'm safe, but like an emotionally safe space that you don't have to worry about judgment. You don't have to protect your partner's feelings.
Mhm.
It relieves your partner of caregiving. It relieves you of caregiving for them. Like you literally get to just dump it out and have a therapist organize it with you, or just sit in it and empathize with it or validate it for you. And so I'm a huge proponent of counseling. I'm a therapist and I go to counseling. But I think everyone deserves a space where they can just rest. And that's what it symbolizes for me.
I love that you mentioned that you can, what did you say about your partner?
Yeah, you don't have to protect your partner's feelings. You don't have to
Yeah.
caregive for them. I mean, like when you're processing with your partner, you both experienced the same trauma in different ways, physiologically and emotionally. I think there's a lot of protection that happens in couple relationships.
Yes.
And gosh, can I give you all of my feelings? Because then you're going to feel all the feelings, and you love me and don't want me hurting. So you want to fix it. And so then we just, although we can validate it, we start to kind of take care of each other and don't really just get to be in the mess and in the hurt without trying to fix it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for addressing that.
Yeah.
How can a lost mom find a therapist? Like, I think that's part of, when we're grieving, there's so many things going on, and like doing, I don't even know the right word for it, but like technical things like searching, for a therapist,
Mhm.
like, and then you get a big list and how do I choose and all of those things. So how can we help lost moms find the right person for them? And like, where do they start?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a big part of grief is that brain fog, right? Like when someone is grieving, I mean, it literally looks like they have Alzheimer's at times.
Yes,
Like
that's the word I
you
was
forget
looking
little
for. Thank
things.
you.
Yeah. Like it's fascinating what happens to the brain in grief. And so, really simple way to start is searching what we have. And I know Peyton, you'll show notes this. It's Postpartum Support International.
Okay.
They are an international organization that has credentialed training for therapists to understand the full spectrum of postpartum mood disorders and grief and loss. Because I think what happens also in the loss community is moms who are lost moms also don't get validated for the hormonal experience they're having, the postpartum experience that they're having. So
Yes.
we want training in both. And so Postpartum Support International is typically the go-to referral that I utilize. You can find someone in your zip code, someone that takes your insurance or has like a sliding scale. And there's typically, depending on the community you're in, several options. I've referred moms who are in Mexico and in Europe to therapists. So wherever you're
Wow.
listening, there's typically a connection point through Postpartum Support International. And if not, you can email them and they will help you get connected.
I love knowing that. So
Yeah.
you are a person that we have listed on our website at gatheringhope.org, but we have also, with your guidance, added Postpartum Support International because we have women who are involved with Gathering Hope or lost moms or just Googling, and end up on
Yeah.
our page somehow. So, but they're not in Texas. And
Mhm.
so having that resource out there and knowing that everyone listed on that website deals with postpartum moms
Mhm.
is such a huge help. I want to veer just a little bit. And
Yeah.
can you address postpartum? Because I think a lot of us maybe, or maybe our partner
Mhm.
or the people around us don't necessarily consider us
Mhm.
postpartum. And so I know we've talked about, you and I have talked about postpartum mood disorders.
Mhm.
So, can we talk about just for a second postpartum mood disorders and grief and how they're
Mhm.
different, how they overlap, that kind of thing? Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, it gives me chills because I think that we got so caught up in her loss, which is big, and his loss, which is big. But their loss is also, I mean, compartmentalized, built onto already the hormonal mood changes in pregnancy. And so whether it's a miscarriage, whether, it's a stillborn baby, whatever the case is, their mom is going through a lot, and so is dad. And so, the stats is that about 1 in 10 women, or 1 in 8 women, 1 in 10 dads will experience some kind of postpartum mood disorder.
Okay.
Um, Now let's add grief in the mix. And grief is also going to heighten any risk factor for a postpartum mood disorder. And then if you have history of loss, that heightens it. If you have history of infertility, if you have history of traumatic pregnancy, you have history of medical complications, right? Gosh, I mean, you're signing up for a postpartum mood disorder likely, right? Like
Yes.
those are risk factors that are legitimately um, they make sense of why people would struggle. And so what we have in the maternal mental health community is what we call PMADS, which is postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. You hear a lot about postpartum depression, but we don't talk about there's postpartum depression, there's postpartum anxiety, there's postpartum OCD, which a lot of moms call anxiety and it lives
Okay.
under that umbrella, but there's a lot of behaviors, especially with loss, that can really add up in that. And then there's postpartum bipolar disorder and postpartum psychosis. And so being aware, talking to your medical provider, I know my risk factors. I know that we are focusing on my loss, but let's also look at this other part of me dimensionally, hormonally, biologically, and let's address this as well. And even if that's your history from a prior pregnancy,
Mhm.
and you're on track for a healthy pregnancy now, you need to be proactive in knowing those risk factors as well. And it doesn't mean you're doomed. It just means that you can get early intervention, which is awesome. A lot of my moms, we have the medicine conversation before they even have their baby. You know, what do we do if I need anxiety meds? What do I say? And so they're ready to go into that 2-week appointment and ask for help if they need it, which is so empowering.
I hadn't even really thought about like proactive stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Let's say a mom has experienced a pregnancy loss, she's pregnant again. Like, I think from the outside, she's not thinking this, but from the outside, a lot of people probably assume like, okay, great, she's fine now, right?
Yeah.
And like, why wouldn't she be overjoyed and excited, which she experiences that too, but also being proactive about during that pregnancy, what it's going to feel like when that baby arrives, you know, all of those things. I love being proactive about anything. And so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Well, and I think a good example of that is that I had a mom that had a really traumatic loss,
mhm.
and she was scared to death to go for her first sonogram with her second pregnancy. And her doctor was like, "You're not being compliant." But a lot of my moms who have loss history are scared of their sonograms.
Yes.
And so for me to collaborate with her doctor and kind of advocate and be that voice of like, hey, yeah, because on her 20-week sonogram, she got news that changed her life forever. And so what can we do to put into place some safety measures for her sonograms?
Yeah.
What does she need? She always needs someone to go with her. She needs you to do the sonogram, not a sonogram tech. Like,
Mm.
how can we be proactive in even meeting her needs in that appointment? Because all of her medical history has been triggered. And so giving voice to a lot of those triggers that don't make sense to people that haven't experienced the loss community.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. Knowing that there are therapists out there who will help give voice to you to share with your doctor or actually collaborate with your care provider. Knowing that that's a possibility. Let's say you find a therapist, you make an appointment. What can we ask a person who we're about to like divulge all of our information to, without, not necessarily without going to the appointment, but like, what are some preliminary questions to ask? Like, is this even a good fit?
Yeah. So I would say, and this is a little biased, but I think therapists should offer free consultations.
Okay.
Meaning, so like our first intake full blown appointment is 75 minutes.
Okay.
That's a lot of commitment.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of bravery to show up to 75 minutes of your hard stuff.
That's an
And
understatement.
so, so hard. So we offer free 15-minute consultations, AKA you can say this is a good fit or it's not before
Okay.
you're committed, before you've invested. And so it's basically, is this the practice that I have a good personality fit? Do I like this therapist? Like, would I have coffee with her?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a personality I'd feel comfortable talking to? And so I would ask, like, do you have, history working with women who have experienced loss? What's your training? I literally had a client once say, are you going to be trying to conceive during the time that you're working with me? Because she had a long history of infertility and had a therapist get pregnant before, and that was really triggering. And, she immediately was like, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but that was a really good question.
Yeah.
And
I think we
so,
don't know that we're allowed to ask questions like that. I don't
yeah,
anyway. I'm an Enneagram too, and I'm like, I'm trying to
yeah,
like be careful of like your emotions. I know not everybody is
yeah,
like that, but like just knowing that we can ask those questions is huge.
yeah. It's huge. And this is the one space you don't have to people please in, my Enneagram 2 friend, right? Like, this is the reason you're investing in counseling is so you can go and just be. If you have a session with a therapist that like something hit a nerve, you get to bring that up. It's a relationship. And so it doesn't have to feel as structured and busy as it has to feel, do I feel comfortable being myself, my truest, most authentic, vulnerable self. And if you don't with that person, that's not a good fit for you. People break up with therapists all the time. It's okay to do that. You get different things from different therapists. I've had 3 different therapists personally over my lifespan, and I've gotten different things from each of them, which I'm so grateful for. It's not a marriage. You don't have to stay there forever.
That kind of leads into my next question is, what can you talk about the different types of therapy or like different approaches that different therapists take? One of the questions that we had come in on Instagram specifically was asking about EMDR for lost moms.
Yeah.
So could you kind of talk about the spectrum of different types of therapy and then specifically address EMDR?
I love it. Yes. So under the umbrella of maternal mental health, there is all different backgrounds, personality styles, and theoretical orientations, basically meaning this is how we treat X, Y, and Z. So first priority, as we're triaging, is that they're trained in maternal mental health. I love looking for certifications that they've gone to or trainings that they've gone to. One, so they're not projecting their own experience onto you, but 2, that they're trained in a diversity of loss histories, because everyone's journey is so different. There are different types of therapy. So I would say that most therapists are probably pretty eclectic, which means, ooh, we take this piece of this and this piece of this, and they work really well together. For example, CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Kind of like, let's focus on, the thought and the behavior and how we like take care of that. Well, that's great. Everyone's going to use pieces of that. But that isn't a whole therapy treatment that I use. I use little pieces of that. So that's what I would call eclectic. There is trauma therapy, which is EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. So eye movement desensitization therapy. I'm saying the word wrong. I'm saying the D wrong. I'm not trained in it. It's not my thing. That would be a red flag. If you were wanting EMDR, I wouldn't be your girl. So it basically is where you're able to process trauma memories without actually having to like verbally speak them out. Right. And so it is really, really helpful for women with traumatic childbirth, really, really helpful for women with loss, really great therapy. I have clients that do the talk therapy with me where they like talk it through, they process, and then we'll say, hey, like this memory is stuck with you. Like you're having a really hard time with this. Let's add some EMDR. Let me refer you to so-and-so, do a little bit of treatment there. And then they'll do a few sessions and then come back. So it's definitely a really cool treatment and really, really great for women with, traumatic childbirth and loss history. There's all different types of couples therapy. Okay. So one of my favorite couples therapy resources, and it's kind of like Postpartum Support International, it's Gottman. Okay. And they have tons of free resources online. Several of our staff members are trained in it. And it's very friendly to lost families, I feel like.
Make sure and link that in the show notes too.
Yeah. And they have a ton of resources, like podcasts and just like free materials online that I would definitely recommend checking out. So I would say if you were referred for a specific type of treatment, that is really awesome. And also, as long as it lives under the maternal mental health umbrella, I wouldn't get too caught up in the theories and treatment modalities there, unless there was a specific referral for a specific need.
Okay, good to know. We talked briefly about this, but what can someone who's brand new to therapy expect during an appointment?
Great question. It's going to depend also on the therapist. Okay. So we practice from a holistic perspective of we want to understand the whole picture of our clients. We want to water the roots of the problem, not just the flower. So someone with loss history, we want to get right in there and we want to address that. But there's also probably lack of family support, lack of boundaries, those kind of things too. And so we're going to want to hear about that. I always joke, the first session's a little bit longer. I always joke that there's a vulnerability hangover that comes after.
Talk about that, please.
Yes. I mean, you've just dumped all your puzzle pieces on the floor and they are not organized. They are not color coded. It's on the floor. It feels so tender. Mm-hmm. And so you want to just take care of yourself after that appointment. You're going to have talked about a lot of trauma memories, some of them that you've compartmentalized in those cute little container store compartments, put on a shelf, took them out, dusted them off, dumped them on the floor. It's hard. And so that is not the night to go to happy hour with your girlfriends. That's not the night to study for an exam. That is going to be just slowly taking care of yourselves. And the first few appointments, they're hard. They really are. I won't lie. But there's also a lot of relief that comes in that hard. And sometimes therapy feels worse before it feels better, honestly.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to my personal experience, which is not, everyone's different. It sounds like therapy is pretty nuanced, but in, the grief experience, there's a lot that is the same, but then there's a lot that's very nuanced. And the first time I ever went to see a counselor, I did not want to be there. I went because the people around me felt like I should be there, which they were right. Okay. But I just didn't want to go. And I went in, it was 2 months after I lost my son, and like full crisis mode, like the big sobs. I can't breathe. My face is like, looks like I've been punched in the face because, just of all the tears and so many emotions coming out. And I literally sobbed for an hour. And I don't even know if, and I went on to see her for like 18 months. Okay. But I don't even know if she like got anything from me in that first appointment. I'm laughing now. But it was so much.
Yeah.
And for the person who is hesitant to start, because let me tell you, I was grieving, but I'm the container store. Okay.
Yeah. Color coded.
Right. I've got my systems. I've got my things that work. I've got my things that don't work.
Yeah.
And you're right. It for me, it did get worse before it got better. Yeah. I can, without a shadow of a doubt, say I'm not the person. I would not be the person that I am today without, and I was in there every week, every single week. I wouldn't be the person that I am today without it. But knowing that first appointment might be super emotional, is there anything that we can say to a mom who's afraid of those emotions that are going to come up?
Yeah. It's so interesting. We have, I have so many clients apologize for crying. And like, it's going to make me cry. Like, that is the best gift you can give yourself, to pay attention to that lump in your throat. When you said, like, I don't even know if she got anything from me, like, man, I bet she was humbled to sit in that space with you and experience that. Right? Like, you don't have to perform there. And the coolest thing about being a therapist, I know we're both like tearing up. The coolest thing about
my wing is a 3. Okay. My Enneagram wing is a 3. So like, I'm very I should be put together. Grief has really undone me in so many ways.
Gosh. It's so messy. It's the messiest thing you can ever experience.
Yes. Like, but not about me. You talk about your client. I'm sorry.
No, it's so messy. And
look at me. I just apologized to you.
I know. That's like, you're literally like, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up, like talking about grief. And it's like, I'm tearing up with you. I will do that in session all the time. And I remember like trying to feel like I'm supposed to be a cool and composed therapist. And it's like, no, I'm bearing witness to someone's worst moment of their life. Like, gosh, that's humbling that someone feels safe sharing that in this space.
Yeah.
And I have clients, like, they're scared to have a panic attack. They're scared to get to that.
Yeah.
But who better to have a panic attack with than your therapist?
A trained professional.
Yeah. Let it out. Like, lose your mind here. Like, scream, cry, hit the pillow. You get to be, because this is the only time this week that you're going to get to do that. And so do it for yourself. We have fidgets to move your body with. We have I mean, salts, if you get into a trauma response, cold packs, like we will walk through our patio back and forth on the trail. Like we will move. You do what you need to do.
Wow. I love that. I you're making me recall so many things going through this conversation, which I did not expect from our conversation today. Um, but like I can vividly remember like the way tissues would shred in my hands, you know, or like how I would like pick underneath my fingernails. I know that's gross to say, but like I had to do something. I love that you offer the ability for movement in your office.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's unique or new or, you know, but I love that you're willing, that you personally are willing to do that with your clients. I think that's amazing.
Well, and I also think like the trauma, I mean, I'm really big on like trauma gets stored in the body. I think there's a lot of research that points us to that. The Body Keeps the Score is a really great book for learning about that. But the body has kept all of this. It's contained all of this, our brain, our heart, our uterus, right? Like all of this has trauma in it. And so being aware of that somatic need of healing, we're going to need to move our body. We're going to need to pay attention to like, my throat gets blocked up when I say this. Like, that's our body asking us to pay attention to it. And so being somatically aware, I think, is really, really important.
I know that so like when I cry, just, I don't know, regular tears, right? When I'm crying specifically thinking about my son, this whole space right here within like 30 seconds does feel like someone hit me in the face.
Wow.
It's like that. And so even if I'm not intentionally thinking about James, if my face starts to hurt that way, I really know what that's about.
Yeah.
So I think that the holistic perspective is something that I'm just working through like 8 years later of, you know, trauma stored in the body. The body does keep score for sure. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yes.
The body keeps the score.
Yes. Yeah. So very true. I want to ask some personal thoughts from you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, what are your thoughts on, do you ever move on with grief or get over? Do you ever think that someone gets over that?
Well, I mean, I'm like struggling as I'm taking off the therapist hat and I'm literally wearing a hat right now, but like, I want to ask you that question. Right. But I will say that you never get over it. You're not supposed to. Like, you're not supposed to. You will never be the same person. And like, you also weren't supposed to learn to be a different person because of this. Like, I don't believe that like, you know, the rain turns into a rainbow always. Like you're allowed to be mad that that turned into a rainbow. But I really think that you can integrate. I don't think you move on, but I think you integrate the experience. And it won't always hurt this bad, but it's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to give you a pain in your eyes, right? Like, that's who he was to you. And so there's a part of remembering and honoring that you always want. You always want to integrate.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you agree, Peyton, as a mom?
You know, I think the answer is no, but I do agree with you that I like that word integrate. Like, you learn to walk with your friend grief, right?
Yeah.
At first, like you're just battling each other, right? And sometimes grief totally overtakes and wins. But then over time, I really feel like it's just something you learn to move through life with.
Yeah.
And I have over the years learned to look at grief as like a friend, because it not that I ever hope to get over or stop remembering my son or any other grief. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, just about baby loss, even though that's what we're talking about today. It's that I always thought like when everything was fresh, that someday I would forget and I wouldn't be as
Mhm.
sad. And that would be such a disservice to him.
Mhm.
And now that I'm not on the floor sobbing all the time, and that I'm living a fairly wonderful life, grief helps me to remember him, but with a different light,
Yeah.
you know, um, and more like,
Yeah.
just blessed to be his mom instead of
Yeah.
just so angry and sad that he's not here. And that still
Yes.
happens. That
Yes.
still happens.
Well, I was gonna say, like, when I hear you say, like, I'm not laying on the floor anymore, but like, I bet you feel safe to do that every once in a while if you need it, you know?
100%.
Like, yeah, like, you know that you can lay on the floor for a day, and then you'll get
Okay.
up the next day and it'll be better.
Yes.
And that you're allowed to do that too, and that healing isn't linear, like, it's
Yes.
all over the place. And like, that there are days that loving him hurts, and there are days that loving him brings you that joy. And it can be all of it at the same time. It doesn't have to be just one thing.
So true. So, so very true. We're such complex people, you know. um, we're not just one or the other, even though we'd like to be
It
sometimes.
would be, it'd be more organized, wouldn't it? Maybe
Right?
more container store worthy.
um, can you share your thoughts on suffering versus pain?
Yeah. So Megan Devine is my forever girl crush in the grief world. She wrote the book that I have given probably 20 times now. My copy has like mascara stains on it and like is a personal journal. Like I would never let someone read it or touch it. But it's called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And in her book, she's a therapist. And so she talks about how she did a terrible job of therapy for 20 years until she lost her husband.
Oh,
Right. And
wow.
it's like,
I did not know that part of her story, that she was a therapist.
yeah.
Okay.
So she was a licensed clinical social worker and practiced therapy. And she's like, I feel bad for every client I ever served because I didn't understand their grief. Like I didn't understand the deep, gritty pain of it. And so her book talks so much about it. Like if you're listening today, buy it. It's the best $8.99 you'll ever spend. Um, but it talks a lot about the difference between pain and suffering. And pain is grief is awful. Pain is I should not have lost my child. Pain is my pregnancy shouldn't have ended. I should have been able to carry this baby. Suffering is any behavior that increases pain. So suffering is attending a baby shower when you're not ready to attend a baby shower. Suffering is taking down the nursery when you're not ready to take down the nursery. Right. And so suffering is your responsibility to not engage into. And boundaries is what protects suffering. Pain is what it is. Suffering is things that we engage in because we want to people please. My Enneagram twos.
Yes.
Suffering is, is not protecting ourselves or not listening to that lump in our throat or pain in our eyes that says, I don't want to do this. And so in the early stages of grief, this concept is tremendous for survival because you have to trust your gut. And that's, in my opinion, the difference between pain and suffering.
Yeah. You mentioned another word that is super important. And quite frankly, most of us suck at this, but talk a little bit about boundaries for lost parents.
Oh, I love boundaries.
I am learning to love boundaries and not be insulted by them. How about that?
They are hard. And that's why I love them because like every woman or man or child that opens the door of the couch therapy is like, I struggle with boundaries. And we're like, come on in, let's do this because boundaries are crucial. I think that we think boundaries are mean or rude, or a million other words we could use for it, but they are crucial. And so boundaries are not doing things that don't make us feel good. Right.
Yeah.
Boundaries are allowing, someone to tell us what to do or tell us how to feel or tell us how to grieve. And it's not giving permission to that gut reaction that says that doesn't work for me, right? And boundaries don't have to be big and bad conversations. They can be small statements like, hey, that doesn't work for me right now. Thanks for letting me know. I'm not really open to that right now. And they're literally the kindest thing you can do for yourself in grief. There's not a lot of things that you can do, again, in grief that makes it better, but boundaries are definitely one of them that are worth exploring of how to protect yourself in that season.
We hear from a lot of moms who try to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And are unsuccessful for one reason or another. And it's not really in my value system to play the blame game, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of boundaries are pushed back on by support people.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say like, that doesn't work for me to go to a baby shower,
Mm-hmm.
let's just take this one example. What are some things that you can help equip a mom with of what to say when someone is not accepting of your boundary?
Yeah. I mean, I think let's use the baby shower as an example. Like, I think that first off, everyone feels like you're supposed to go to a baby shower and it's just supposed to be joy. And I don't know a lot of women in the community that experience joy from baby showers, to be really honest.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that if you say, I'm so sorry, I'm not able to attend, right? Then don't trigger yourself into feeling guilty and shopping the registry to send a gift, right? Like that increases pain, that increases suffering. You can send a gift card. You also can opt out, right? You don't have to sign up for that meal train. There are seasons in life when things truly don't work for you. And if your mother-in-law or best friend doesn't understand your reasoning, then they are really privileged that they don't get why a baby shower is hard.
Yeah.
And that can be enough to rest on that it's not your responsibility to clean it up or take care of them. I mean, there are just some things that you don't understand unless you've lived this community, this loss. And so if they don't, that's their loss, but it's not your job to take care of them. It's their job to take care of you. And I'm sorry they're not taking care of you, but you don't need to sacrifice your peace.
I think that's very wise. It's something that I constantly tell my own children. I've, especially my youngest, I'm like, that's just not for you to carry, right? You don't have to carry that. And like, how many times do we like suck at taking our own advice or our therapist's advice, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just something that takes a lot of practice.
Yes. And there is a really great book and workbook called Set Boundaries, Find Peace.
Okay.
And it's not grief related, but there's specific sections for specific people in your life that push boundaries. And I really find that that can be a really helpful tool when you just need a reminder of, the need for the boundary. And I mean, I think one of the funny things about therapy is facial expressions. Like my clients will be like, okay, my mother-in-law did this, and my eyes will bug out. And they're like, okay, I'm not alone in that feeling. And I'm like, no, that was not appropriate. Like you got to be mad. What can we do moving forward to protect you from that happening again? And holidays, baby showers, like lost anniversaries, man, people feel really entitled to some big opinions.
It's so true, including myself. Like I cannot, I can't excuse myself fully from that. But I think that a lot of therapy has helped me through, seeing like, okay, I need to accept this person's boundary, not let them walk all over me, but it's okay for us to both have boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that we can like respect it and know that it's not about me as a person. It's about the other person's like safety emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that is just not valued by everyone in the same way. That emotions are valid and valuable,
Yeah.
and not something that has to be pushed aside. It's worthy of tending to and paying
Yes. I love
attention
that word.
to.
I
So
love the word tending.
uh, I think that for a long time and for a good portion of our society, there are a lot of people who view emotions and
Mhm.
all the stuff that comes with emotions as like secondary,
Yeah.
or that's just something that, using the word triggered is like
Yeah.
is a wussy thing to do, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very real
Mhm.
word and real experience
Yeah.
that has other consequences, that and that's the whole reason we're doing this now, because
Mhm.
of mental health and then the need to prioritize mental health. What would you say to the larger community out there about prioritizing mental health?
I think that taking care of yourself is the kindest thing that you can do. And it's the cheapest analogy, but it's the oxygen mask. Like, I cannot be a wife, a mother, a therapist, a friend if I don't take care of myself first. And anyone who has parented a child while grieving a child knows that you have to take care of yourself first so you can take care of that child. And taking care of yourself first feels really confusing and disorienting because our culture doesn't praise us for that
Yeah.
or tell us even how to do that. And so it's a new navigation of how to do this well. And follow your gut, like trust it. We talked about that brain fog earlier. Literally, Megan Devine says, if it makes you want to throw up, don't do it. When you're in brain fog, thinking through the logistics of boundaries, like it's just too much. It's overwhelming. Literally, the simplest piece of advice, but like so impactful, is don't do it if you're going to puke. If you want to throw up, do not do it. That's your body saying no. And so learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your healing, your needs is the biggest gift you can give to yourself. And if you don't think you're worthy of that gift, you can do it for the other people. And even though it's for yourself.
I think that a lot of people start in that place. I'm going to do this for someone
Yeah.
else,
Uh-huh.
which
Yeah,
is whatever it takes to get you in there.
absolutely. I'll go for that reason any day, but I
Yes.
know the real reason you're sitting in this chair. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I think that is a good place to land. Before we do that, would you share a little bit about what you are doing with Postpartum Support International and talk about this new hotline that's available for moms?
Oh my gosh, I love this. This came out last week and I immediately sent you a message and I was like, look, Peyton. So Postpartum Support International, I'm one of the Texas board members, huge fan of Postpartum Support International for their awareness of integrating lost moms in the community. There is a new hotline. We will, make sure to link it. It is a 24/7 hotline, sponsored by, right, really cool legislation that just came out. And so
Yes.
Postpartum Support International has a hotline. There's now another hotline you can call 24/7 with these two numbers and speak to a support coordinator that will support you as a woman who has experienced a loss, as a woman who is pregnant after a loss. Reach out. You are not alone. There are literally people that want to talk this through with you, connect you with resources, gather with you, and remind you that you're not alone. So we're really excited as providers in this community for this opportunity for, people in the United States. It's going to be tremendous. So we'll definitely make sure to link that number out.
For sure. When you sent me that message, I sent you back like the crying emojis, because
Yes.
I'm like, someone has done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just so thrilled that one of our biggest platforms is to provide good resources, connections to counselors, but good, solid resources. And I know from this organization, it's going to be amazing. So, how can people connect with you after this podcast? What's the best way to reach
Yeah.
out?
So I mean, we are on all the platforms. We are on Instagram, Facebook. And my team even talked me to being on TikTok.
TikTok. I saw you on TikTok.
I mean, I'm kind of loving it, if I'm being
A
honest.
little
I love a
fun.
good dance move and a little 2000 throwback music. So I'm feeling it lately. So will you link those in like our
Absolutely.
podcast? We're the Couch Therapy. We're in Allen and Colleyville. We have 2 offices. We do in-person or telehealth anywhere in Texas. If you need a therapist outside of Texas, Postpartum Support International is my go-to. Um, and if you have any questions for me personally, or need resources, I would love to support you in that. It's Emily at thecouchtherapy.org.
Awesome. We'll make sure and collect all of that, put it in our show notes. This will be up on YouTube as well. So we'll make sure and link everything there. Emily, thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
This has been great. Thank you.
So fun. Thanks, Peyton.